Larry Householder's Act Two comes to a close. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Jeremy Pelzer, State House correspondent for Cleveland.com, Morgan Harper, progressive activist, and Shannon Jones, former state legislator. For the first time since Jane Buchanan was president of the United States, the Ohio House has kicked out one of its own.
75 affirmative votes, 21 negative votes. The resolution is adopted, and Larry Householder is expelled from the Ohio House of Representatives.
11 months after federal prosecutors accused Larry Householder of leading a $61 million bribery scheme, his colleagues expelled the former speaker for disorderly conduct. Householder argued the move was unconstitutional and again maintained his innocence.
I have not, nor have I ever took a bribe or provided a bribe. I have not, nor have I ever solicited a bribe. And I have not, nor have I ever sold legislation. Never, ever.
Extraordinary afternoon at the State House this week. Jeremy Pelzer, you were there. Describe what the scene was like, and it's been nearly a year since he was first indicted or charged, or the charges came to light. What took so long?
Yeah, as one lawmaker told me when I entered the room that day, there's not many times you go into the House chamber where you don't know what's going to happen. And I think for a lot of lawmakers, they entered the chamber that day not being 100% sure. They thought they might know what would happen, but they weren't 100% sure. And as it turned out, it was a move that hasn't happened in 150 years, at least. And this accelerated quickly. As you said, it's been 11 months since Larry Householder was arrested, but a small but pretty influential group of House Republicans have been holding up expelling Householder from not just his seat as Speaker, which they did almost right after his arrest, but then expelling him from the legislature altogether. And finally, we're still working on exactly the blow by blow of what happened, but things accelerated quickly, and it just, the dam broke, and it turned out that there was more than enough votes on both sides of the aisle to expel him from the House.
Shannon Jones, you've served in the legislature. It had to have been a tough vote, even if you voted to expel him, to throw out one of your own, to undo the will of the voters, because he was reelected last November, starting his new term in January. Was this disorderly conduct? Was his act, was being indicted alone enough to expel him?
Well, I certainly understand how difficult of a decision it was, but this was not an inconsequential, charges that were filed. And so, everybody is entitled their day in court, if you will. But I don't think everybody is entitled to have a seat in the Ohio House of Representatives. And that body gets to determine what the code of conduct is and how they're, the example that they're going to set on behalf of all of Ohioans. And so while I'm sure it was tough, I think they made the right decision.
Morgan Harper, you've been asking for this for quite a while, as have many Democrats. It's done. Is the issue over as far as how state reps voted on Larry Householder?
Well, this set of issues is, and I agree with Shannon, I mean, our institutions have to have some meaning and some standards for them to be effective. And we haven't always seen that coming out of the Ohio State Legislature, but this was a moment where there was a clear sign that we should be better than this. And criminal indictment for one of the largest bribery scandals in history seems like a pretty good baseline for conduct that we're not going to accept from our elected officials. And it doesn't mean that the people of his district will have no representation. Someone will be appointed, they will have a voice, but this particular representative did not meet the standard of what Ohioans should expect out of people who represent us.
Jeremy, and the folks you talked to, did Republicans, like Bob Cupp, he said that Householder should resign. He's pretty much said that since the get-go, but he was very coy, vague on what should happen to him. But this week he was pretty firm that the indictment is pretty damning. It's reason to expel him. What pushed him over the edge? Was it the Republicans wanted to get this off their plate? They didn't want this hanging over their head as they start to ramp up their campaigns for 2022.
Well, that's what Cupp said, talking with reporters right after the expulsion vote. He said this was something that has been hanging over the body, and is something that that needed to happen. Now, he didn't say up until that point. He held his cards pretty close to his vest, and his caucus was fairly divided for a while. There were a number of Republicans who thought he should leave. There were a number of Republicans who thought they should wait until he was convicted or not convicted to decide what to do about him. And then there were people like Bob Cupp who said, we just kind of want this to go away. We just hope he resigns. And in the meantime, well, let's see what happens. And finally, enough Republicans got kind of sick of the issue, especially as they're dealing with a massive budget, as they're trying to wrap up for the summer. They decided enough is enough, and we're going to move on this. It's also worth noting, too, that a freshman lawmaker was behind this, Brian Stewart. So after months and months and months of talk, it was really a freshman lawmaker from Pickaway County, a Republican, who brought this resolution and got it successfully passed, along with another Republican, Mark Frazier from Newark.
Shannon Jones, do Republicans who supported this removal face any backlash? There was a lot of, Donald Trump undertones to the debate in the House this week. Larry Householder used his name. I think other Republicans, his allies, used his name. This was similar to what they argue the way Donald Trump was treated during his presidency and in the election. Do Republicans who voted to expel him face any backlash, do you think?
I don't think so. I mean, I think was a pretty far-fetched argument for anybody to make. These are pretty serious charges, and the news has never gotten better for the speaker. And look, I think that it's a perfectly reasonable argument for members of the chamber to be able to say there is a code of conduct here. And, that's what's in the best interest of all of Ohioans. And I honestly don't think that that people are for corruption, and that there just isn't that kind of connection between Larry Householder and Donald Trump. I mean, it's not the same. It's certainly not the same appeal, notwithstanding how hard he tried to make that connection.
Morgan Harper, chances are between now and the next 150 years, a Democrat sitting in the legislature will be indicted. Does this set a precedent that you can lose your seat even though you've not been convicted in a court of law? Is that a good precedent to set?
I hope it sets a precedent that when you treat our democracy as if it's up for sale, there are consequences. This is the beginning of the professional consequences, but let's hope that there also are criminal consequences for such behavior.
Okay. Our next topic, the Ohio Senate has pushed all its chips into the middle of the table. Okay, that metaphor is already legal in Ohio, but the Senate this week approved a bill that would massively expand lawful gambling in Ohio. The main goal of the bill is to allow Ohioans to legally bet on sports, but the measure goes much further than that. It would establish 58 licenses for betting on all sports. Some would be in buildings, others would take bets online or with a smartphone. The bill would also allow for an unlimited number of, say, second-tier licenses for sports betting kiosks in businesses that sell liquor, like restaurants and bars. It would legalize electronic bingo in veterans halls and fraternal organization halls. And it would allow betting on competitive video games. So get ready to bet on Candy Crush, apparently. Shannon Jones, you were in the legislature when lawmakers had their last fight against legalized gambling in the state, just before the casino amendment was approved. Take us back to that, and how extraordinary is it that this bill has got a lot of support in the legislature that would basically take all the reins off legalized gambling in Ohio?
Yeah, it's a really stunning development. I mean, it took a long time for the legislature to enact expansion of gaming, and really it took the casino industry to take it before the people in order for the legislature to start moving on it. And even at that, there was a lot of caution around what are the guardrails, how do we protect the public, what kinds of investments need to be made by, way of public policy for people who are addicted to gambling and so forth. There was an actual robust discussion about that. And, quite frankly, the take to the state was pretty dramatic. In this instance, fast forward, a decade, and now everybody could literally download an application on their phones and have instant access to gaming and barely a peep about what this means by way of, public policy, how this impacts our society. And the take to the state is a mere $20 million. It's really stunning how the Senate has managed to spread the peanut butter so thinly that everybody has a cut, and the public welfare and even the impact to the state budget is barely even discussed.
Jeremy, that is the theory behind this bill. Everyone gets a little piece, right? I mean, I think the big sports books, those 58 licenses, those are the big dogs. But we can have kiosks in every place that sells booze.
Sure, everyone gets a little bit, but there's opposition to this bill from people who say they're not getting enough. For example, the bill would give preference to professional sports teams. So does that mean in Cuyahoga County that Jack Cleveland Casino, would they get a sports betting license? That they might be left out of that. You have a number of other businesses, bars, restaurants. They're saying they're not getting enough opportunity under this bill to offer it. So while, this kind of offers something to everyone, but then if you're one of those groups, you might think, hey, am I getting enough of this?
Yeah.
And so when you're seeing opposition, that's where a lot of this opposition is coming from.
That's because the bill does limit those 58 big licenses. It limits how many can be in certain areas. I think it's based on 100,000
Exactly.
population. So that's why Franklin County may get 2. That's it. So do they go to the casino? Yeah. Do they go to Nationwide Arena? Do they go to the Memorial Tournament? Who knows? Morgan Harper, this money would go to education, they say. There's a lot of projections. I think the projection is $23 million. Do you believe that projection? Is that a good investment to expand gambling to help fund Ohio schools?
Yeah, it's clear that education is not the focus of this effort, right? And I have real concerns about just how much this is going to preference big players, exactly what Shannon and Jeremy are getting at. I mean, we know how this game plays out. Everybody gets a little, but there's some people that are going to know how to work the bit they're getting a lot better with license fees that are upwards of $100,000, $1 million. Who's going to be able to afford that? So yeah, I think this has real implications that not only will not enable small, medium-sized businesses to compete effectively, but also implications for our public health, that, increasing gambling without a real economic strategy, jobs that are going to be more stable and allow parents to be in a better place to support their kids' education. That's what I'd like to see from our state legislature. And I'm not sure just focusing on sports gambling is the way to get there.
Jeremy, where do we stand on whether or not we'll be able to bet on the Buckeyes, on college sports? Where is that? Is that a part of this bill that we can bet on Ohio State, Cincinnati, Miami, Cleveland State?
Actually, frankly, I haven't been following the bill enough to know where that currently stands, so I don't want to give false information.
That is an issue. I know that there's some discretion.
It has been definitely an issue, and colleges and universities have testified that they don't want betting to be allowed on their sports teams, but I don't know exactly where things stand right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was some. Should the lawmakers decide if Ohio State is subject to this, or should the Casino Control Commission? Shannon Jones, should college sports be a part of this? I find it hard to believe that a sports book is not going to want the Buckeyes as a part of their portfolio, so to speak.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting question. And what I would, look, I've always come from this as been someone who's opposed the expansion of gaming right from Jump Street, because I'm very concerned about the public health consequences, particularly as it relates to our young children and who live in families who have parents who are addicted, but also in this instance, how young children have been raised on this technology now of their smartphones and their young adults. And so how is that impacting their behaviors? And so, when you start talking about college sports, where technically adults are playing sports, but they are certainly young adults, I think we should be very, very concerned about the conflict of interests and the message that we're sending to our young people in this state.
Okay, our next topic, another week, another sign Ohio is returning to normal. Officially, Ohio's COVID-19 state of emergency is over. It ended Friday, 15 months and 4 days after Governor DeWine issued it. Ending the order is mostly symbolic. It forces the state to restore regular financial practices, some of which were suspended during the emergency. The virus is still out there. Over the past 2 weeks, an average of 14 Ohioans have died each day from COVID. Ohio still sees about 300 new cases a day, and 43% of Ohio's population now is fully vaccinated. That's just below the national average. Morgan Harper, are we okay now? Is it time to come outside? Is this over? Are we free?
Well, it's definitely time to come outside. I don't know about going inside, but it's interesting because we saw a similar situation last summer, minus the vaccines, of course, and the vaccines are a huge development and a very positive one that enable us to have more freedom of movement and being able to socialize. But as we also know, there are variants that are spreading with international travel opening up. People will be exposed potentially to those variants, bring them back. It's unclear how the vaccinations will be managed and whether people will need booster shots, the implementation of that. And so I would say there's still need for caution. And there is some concern that with the change in the CDC guidance, with the opening up, it was like one day people were wearing masks, the next day no masks, that it's not totally clear how this will all pan out, especially as temperatures change when we get into the fall. But let's hope for the best and prepare for the worst, I guess.
Jeremy, our vaccine rate is, it's right at the national average, just below it, but we're far behind some other states that, frankly, started to vaccinate everybody late, much later than Ohio did. What's the government? No, we only have one more week left on the Vax-A-Million lottery, just one prize left. What happens when that's over? How does the governor get folks to get the shot?
Well, he actually hinted on Friday that there's more promotions and ideas coming. He said kind of wait and see over the next couple of weeks what's going to happen. One speculation is that he's trying to look to partner with businesses and other institutions to offer promotions. I know, for example, like a while ago, Krispy Kreme was offering a donut to anyone who got a vaccine. So we'll see what happens there. But the Vax-A-Million is just the beginning, it seems, for the governor.
Maybe they'll have like new cars, new trucks, like a Price is Right or something like that. Come on down, get your vaccine, and we can win a new car. Shannon Jones, how are you feeling these days? You're down in the Cincinnati area in Southwest Ohio. What's the feeling down there? People shutting their masks and getting back to normal?
I think the vast majority of people are behaving like they did prior to the pandemic. You don't see as many masks or social distancing, but you see some on occasion, and there seems to be a lot of respect for those people who choose to wear masks. But, I think largely people are feeling optimistic, but I think that there's this understanding that we have to do more to get people who are hesitant to get the vaccines to get them sooner rather than later. And, in the news now, when we're hearing more about the variants coming from other parts of the world that are more and more concerning, the vaccine is the one constant that, allows us to hold on hope. But we have to do a better job of addressing the hesitancy that exists with too many Ohioans.
Morgan Harper, what would you offer as an incentive, or maybe incentive is not even the right word? What strategy would you take to increase that percentage of folks who have the vaccine?
Well, it's interesting because now, and we've discussed on this program before the role that incentives could play. Obviously, Governor DeWine has been full throttle pursuing that strategy. And so now it's time to look for the next angle, I think. And it would be interesting to see businesses that are willing to mandate that their employees get vaccinated. I know that there was some controversy or misunderstanding of whether or not that was constitutionally allowed. It has been clarified, it is allowed. And so that could be a real point of leadership for corporate America to say, if you want to have a job, you need to be vaccinated. And that is how we are going to best protect our public health. And that's not an issue of freedom or individual rights. That's actually what is necessary for us to function economically as a country. And that would be great to see.
Okay. Well, final topic, the struggle over energy continues in Ohio. It's a struggle between old, proven, yet dirty sources and new, still developing, but cleaner sources. The latest fight looms in the legislature. The Ohio Senate has passed a bill that would give local authorities power to at least slow construction of wind and solar farms. The bill would require wind and solar projects to hold a local public hearing before applying to the state for permission to build. Critics say it just adds a bureaucratic hurdle for renewables that coal and natural gas developers don't have to clear. Supporters say it gives local leaders and residents a say on what happens in their communities. Jeremy Pelzer, just another example of the tension between the new forms of energy and the old standbys at the State House.
Yeah, this is a fight that's been going on for years, and it's going to go on for years. Actually, Senate Bill 52, which is what you're talking about, it would go beyond that. It would allow county commissioners to actually ban the construction of large wind or solar farms in their counties, or at least limit them to what they call energy development districts. And this is a topic that, this is a NIMBY topic, a not in my backyard topic. On the one hand, you want, I think people are open to, in theory, having green energy projects, which bring jobs, which brings investment into the state. On the other hand, you might not want to live next to a solar or wind farm or feel that you don't have any say in that construction. So this topic, this particular bill, it's brought together a motley crew of opponents to it. And it's everyone from the green energy industry, who you would expect, but also oil drillers like BP. You have the Ohio Farm Bureau, the Chamber of Commerce, utilities like AEP. So it's not your traditional, the fault lines here aren't traditional as you might expect along Capitol Square.
You know, that reminds me of another bill that involved energy and regulation. Oh, HB 6, nuclear power. Anyway.
Actually, HB 6 had a pretty similar provision in this for a while, but then they ended up taking it out.
Yeah.
That allow local referendums on green energy projects.
Morgan Harper, shouldn't folks have a say that if you don't want a huge solar farm across the street, shouldn't you have a say on that?
I think we need to be focused, and it would be great to see this happening from the State House, of a reality that climate change is happening, that we need to be aggressively addressing it, and that it also is a really big economic opportunity. And so creating the incentives to make that happen. And yes, people have input into the legislative process, that is necessary, but this type of bill, isn't always very helpful in educating the public and getting the resources necessary to address the climate crisis.
Shannon Jones, what's going on here? Is it folks trying to protect what's in their backyard, or is it other energy interests trying to limit the competition from new energy sources?
Well, I'm sure, the energy's big business, so it's a combination of both. But I honestly think it's kind of the next frontier of private property rights conversations. Yep. And Jeremy talks about the NIMBY, not in my backyard. Certainly these types of projects and development would fall into that category. But there is something about, it's one thing to have the Power Siting Board approve a 50 megawatt project in a community. It's another thing for them to approve one 50 megawatt project next to another in the same community. And I think the community, has the right to say something about that. Yeah. The question always becomes, how do we balance all of the interests. Certainly there's demand for this kind of power out there. We in the state have spent more than a decade on a regulatory scheme to encourage the development of this kind of technology. And in fact, we've incentivized it. And now we have this last hurdle. So we really have to figure out how to balance interests without thwarting what has been a long time coming in this state.
Maybe just really tall shrubs, so you can't see the solar panels. Anyway, time now for our final off-the-record parting shots. And Shannon Jones, we'll start with you.
Well, once again, I'm going to talk about the 15th congressional district race because in just a couple of weeks, absentee voting is going to begin. And I think what we really see developing is we're going to see how the Trump endorsement versus the endorsement of the previous incumbent versus the endorsement of perhaps the people or the grassroots are going to play out in these three distinct candidates. So stay tuned. I think it might, the 15th might really tell us something about next year's election.
Morgan Harper, 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah, happy to have a new holiday that's going to recognize, Juneteenth is now recognized as a federal holiday and also in the state to mark the true end of slavery. And so excited to have more opportunities for people to learn about this, learn about our country's history, and hope that our leaders will take that seriously as well and sharing the message behind this new commemoration.
Jeremy Pelzer, 10 seconds, real quick.
I'd like to give a shout out to all the Capitol Square reporters who have been working almost without a break since March 2020, and hopefully after the budget passes at the end of the month, they'll get a break.
Yes, indeed. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online. Our website is wosu.org/COTR. For our crew and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good weekend.